Right, so it is day 56 of my New Year's resolution to plant a tree every day, and I have one for today, so let's get on with it. Right, so today's planting is going in the same mango grove where I put the Garcinias and a couple of other fruiting trees, so there are a whole bunch of little trees coming up further into this, which tells you straight away that this is a place where trees want to be and where there is room for more trees. But a lot of the trees coming up are mangoes, which I don't need more mangoes next to mango trees. That is a great way to just make sickly mango trees. So instead I will be putting in a triangle palm, and in with that as companion plants, because this is a Madagascan species, I'm going to be chucking in a few mock Madagascan and Madagascan species. So we've got our Dracaena reflexa, which does grow wild in Madagascar, although the only form I have is not the wild type, it is the Song of India variegated type. I'm also putting in some of one of the other Dracaenas that are actually previously in Sansevieria, which I cannot remember the name of this one. This is not a Madagascan one, but it has a growth form that's very similar to the Madagascan Sansevieria pinguinus, which basically walks along on stilts. The stem doesn't usually touch the ground, it lifts up onto these sturdy stilt-like roots, and it stays above the ground level, which is great for when there's sort of flooding, when there's things like mole rats, which I don't know they have in Madagascar, but this species does have to tolerate them, and does very well because its stem is not in the ground where the mole rats can damage it. I'm also putting in Jacaranda podographa, which is a Buddha belly succulent, which is not Madagascan at all, but it's so weird that throughout my childhood I assumed it was, and it comes up beautifully in shade. It has this wonderful coralliform flower, a bright red, beautiful flower in my opinion, and again it spreads quite nicely in shade. It's a nice toxic one which should stop anything too aggressive from attacking the palm. And I've got, just because it had self-seeded quite close to those, and I didn't want it where it was, and it is Madagascan, so I thought, well, might as well move it in with this. I've got a Thorn of Christ, which is Euphorbia milli. Now, I don't actually know much about the triangle palm, which you might know just from the way I sort of skimmed over it. It's from a park in the far south of Madagascar, which contains some of Madagascar's last subtropical rainforests. But I can't even tell for certain whether it's from those rainforests. In my experience of a few of these I've germinated before, they tolerate drying out completely during the dry season. They are very drought tolerant, which makes me suspect they are at least present in the dry forests, and which do get a similar amount of rainfall to us, maybe a little bit less. And so hopefully it should be quite happy here once it's settled in. And one way or another, they are also very shade tolerant in my experience. They do tend to get a little bit leggier in shade, as do most things, but I wouldn't say they etiolate, they just are a little bit more slender and a little bit more space between their leaves. But I did think it was a good opportunity, as it's a plant I don't know much about, to waffle about it specifically. It's a good opportunity to talk about why I'm putting a triangle palm from a round bag into a square hole. So, generally speaking, when you have a plant in a round container, whether it's a pot or a bag, eventually they will get root bound, and their roots will just sort of spiral around and around and around the pot, especially by the time you buy a plant from the nursery. Usually they've got to the point where the roots are too big for the container they're in. So there's all sorts of ways you can deal with this, and some of them involve cutting roots, which I don't like to do because that can be a very easy way to get plants infections, especially if you don't know much about the plant. So what I like to do instead is dig a square hole, because then as those roots continue to try and spiral, because they've got into that habit, if you dig a round hole, they'll just keep on spiraling, and the distinction between the soil you dug and the soil beyond will be lost, and they will just keep on treating the soil you dug as if it's just a bigger pot. If you dig a square hole, they will get to a corner as they spiral around, and then they will spread out and into the soil, and then will form a much healthier root system. So that is why I do that. So yeah, so that should be it for today. Thank you very much for watching. I will be putting the review up at some point. It will be going up after this, but it was filmed several hours ago now. It's currently rendering on my computer. Please tune in again tomorrow. I don't currently have a plan, but we'll see what I come up with.